with the Roadie.
Welcome to Paranormal After Dark. I'm your host, the Roadie. This week, an interesting show. I posit the theory that we look at paranormal and the paranormal investigating in a kind of a, I guess you could say, linear way in Western society, and that Western society is a Christian-based society. So are we looking at paranormal investigation only with that viewpoint in mind? So we interpret things the way Christianity interprets things. So this week I'm speaking to a couple of people who have different belief systems than the norm and see what they think about whether we're missing things when we investigate the paranormal, which is I believe we might be. My first guest, Sean Brandon, one of the investigators from Paranormal New Zealand. How you going, man?
Very good, mate.
Good.
Very good. Nice to be talking to you.
Tell me a little bit about your religious beliefs, if you like, to start with.
Yeah, sure. So my religious beliefs, I'm a pagan. I came to paganism probably 30 years ago. I joined the Pagan Federation in the UK, and I got to meet a pretty cool bunch of people, and eventually we decided that we all had the same motives, etc., and we formed a coven, and it was a fairly eclectic coven. We were witches essentially, but slightly differing sides of witchcraft. But we all got together on full moons and the various festivals and celebrated them together. And yeah, that was me getting into paganism.
Okay, so paganism. See, I'm sort of one of these people that over the years I've just because I'm a bit of a history buff, really, I've studied religion and that in my own time just for the sake of things. Now, I have a rudimental understanding of paganism, or what I call the old religions often. Paganism that you're talking about differs to Wicca, doesn't it?
It's a bit. That's a bit of a strange one, because you get some people that say witches don't have to necessarily be pagan. So Wicca I always see as a modern version of witchcraft. I think the word Wicca sort of came around with Gerald Gardner and that kind of era, which was the 1930s. That was where it was really adopted, I think. But yeah, Wicca and witchcraft, sort of different but the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. That's right. It was more modernised there by Gardner. Now, yeah. So what do you like? You guys, I mean, obviously, you've got gods you worship. Just tell me a little bit about what you guys are into, because I've studied. When I talk about paganism, I got right into going right back to the pre-Christian stuff because I was fascinated with that. But talk to me about what you guys sort of believe.
So basically, the basic thing about paganism is that nature is king or queen. That's what we worship, is nature. The god and the goddess are in my opinion, and this differs between various people, the god and the goddess are the male and the female aspects of nature. So when you look at flowers, for example, you tend to think of the feminine side of nature. When you look at big tall oak trees, you look at possibly the male aspect of nature. Or when you see the stag with the horns, that's the horned god, it's the male side. It's just worshipping nature.
That's correct, and I guess, in terms of modern religions, Christianity especially appropriated a lot of your festivals.
It certainly did.
And I guess that was sort of the way I read it, or the way I understood it, was a lot of it was done to attract people who were into the old religions to come to the new one. You see, this is where I struggled with the whole thing, is that for thousands of years our ancestors, as you say, worship nature, the sun, the moon, the trees, the god of the water, the god of the forest, and then overnight suddenly this new religion appears and just says, oh, we're the right religion, all those other gods were wrong, right?
Yep.
and our God's the one God. And that's where I struggle with the whole thing. It's like, really? You're arrogant enough to just turn up and say, our guy's the guy? I mean, it's kind of like, to me, it's just, I don't know. I just think that's wrong.
I think that they had a very good sales team.
Well, exactly. It was, appropriating Easter and even the date near enough Christmas, near enough to the solstice. Of course, yep. It was a masterstroke. But this leads into the paranormal very shortly for me. When I sort of looked into the old religions, I guess, in my younger days, and I mean, I'm too lazy to actually commit to something like to a religion, right? You know what I mean? But
Yep.
but if I was going to be religious, I'd be pagan, towards that sort of way of things, right?
Yep.
I just don't have time to do the worshipping stuff. But looking into it, I kind of felt that especially the old paganism, before Christ, the spirits were part of everyday life for them. So
Absolutely.
like they lived with the spirits. So there were spirits there, and you didn't fear the spirits. You didn't. You communicated with them every day. Am I reading that right?
Absolutely, 100%. It was. I mean, spirits were part of what makes up the nature and the world. So there's the spirits of the forest, and there's you have your house spirits, and the whole. I once went to Iceland and I went elf spotting, and elves were a massive part of that culture. And all these supernatural beings just made up the world, and people lived alongside them without fear.
And so that brings me to what I've been pondering on for a long time, Sean, is that, I kind of, and this is not, I don't want to disparage anybody in the paranormal community. There's been a little bit of, in recent times, people say something about a team and everyone gets offended and starts, it's not about that, right? It's, what I'm trying to say is, I think because of our predominantly, I guess you could say, Christian-based culture in the Western nations, like Britain, like New Zealand, etc., America, that people kind of investigate in terms of a Christian outlook to spirits.
I think you're right. I mean, I think the whole thing about graveyards around a church are Christian, and everybody thinks that graveyards are the most haunted places ever. I think that the whole perception of the paranormal has been Christianized, led to believe what the Christians told us to believe.
That's my point, and that's what I'm coming to. And the thing that got me thinking about this and really bugged me the most, Sean, was that, and I'll admit, most of these TV shows, it's entertainment, it's crap, right? But they'd go to a house and they go, "Oh, you've got a demon or a poltergeist. Oh no, we better get the local Catholic priest to come down and bloody do an exorcism." Right now, my question is, why does it have to be a Catholic priest, right? And when he gets there, all he's doing is flicking a bit of water around and burning some sage, and the demon's gone. So if it's that easy, why can't your local Hindu or your local pagan or your local witch come down and do it? Why does it have to be a Catholic priest? And that brings me to the thing that demons are a creation of Christianity to drum up business.
Well, according to the Bible, I believe, and I'm far from an expert if anything to do with Christianity, but my understanding is that demons are fallen angels.
Well, you see, this is what I'm saying. This is what the Christians are telling us. But what I'm trying to say is, because my argument is suddenly Christianity became the religion, right? For thousands of years, our ancestors worshipped the other gods, and let's just use the term "other gods" for shits and giggles, right? And we lived with our spirits and stuff around us. So how come suddenly, overnight almost, let's say, in terms of the time span, these so-called spirits who might be mischievous elves or sprites or whatever,
yep,
in the ancient religions, are now demons who are fallen angels? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
No, but it's. I think probably that how you put it is excellent, because I think probably that anything that's not understood from a paranormal point of view or a supernatural point of view, I think was called by Christianity a demon.
And that's right. And but then you see the drumming up the business part for me is that, you need to go get the local priest to do the exorcism, right, or whatever the hell it is, right? And that to me just seems like why can't I've watched them on TV. I know what they do. They get some water and they get some sage. Why can't I become an exorcist? No, because I'm not a Catholic priest.
Exactly. But I mean, I know from the UK. I know pagans that went in and cleared malevolent spirits.
Yeah, but the church would have said you hadn't, wouldn't they?
They exactly right. They would have said, well, he can't do that. He's not a Christian.
And that's my point. And this is where I'm sort of like I'm heading now. As I looking at the teams, various teams around the world, they investigate in terms of the Christian thinking, and I'm wondering if perhaps they're going into places, they're calling out whatever, and because they're thinking of these spirits in the way Christianity's taught them to think, they're actually not realising that they might actually be picking something up, or there might be communication going. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do, yeah. So it could be a nature spirit, or a spirit of the forest, or a house spirit, or something, rather than. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah. In terms of because they think of in the term, and I'm not saying they're Christians, but think in the kind of the I guess the mythology or whatever you want to say that the Western world's created or Christianity's created, and that you have ghosts and you have spirits and you have poltergeists and demons. That's what they're looking for, right? So they're looking for spirits under those sort of terms, and they're not actually thinking that maybe spirits, when you're out hunting or looking for spirits, you should be looking in other directions. This is where I'm coming to you with you, Sean. So when you go on an investigation, how do you, as a pagan, investigate or listen out or watch for spirits? That's what intrigues me, really. No, because it must be different.
That's a really good question, because I think some people would go into a paranormal investigation with fear, and they'd think we're going to be scared tonight, or my way of looking at it is that I just want to understand what these spirits are and what they want. And I don't go in. There's no fear involved with me, and I'm saying that, and probably I'll go on the next investigation and something will scare the living daylights out of me. But I go in thinking that I want to understand what's going on with these entities or spirits or whatever.
So that's what I'm talking about. The kind of I don't want to say lineal, but you know what I'm saying. The thinking, how Christianity set it up is that you're supposed to be scared because these are spirits or ghosts or whatever, right? And so you do see teams going, "Oh, I'm scared," and that's what I'm trying to say. So as a pagan, because you live, I guess, with the belief system, or I mean, it could be the correct system in my view, that the spirits are all around us and that they're part of everyday life. So you go in looking at it in a different way.
I think I probably do. I mean, if you speak to other members of the team, they would. I'm sure they would agree. They've all got a different way of looking at it, and mine comes from probably a very different perspective than any of the other team members.
And so that's what I'm interested in. So if you've been on an investigation, okay, and the, people are sitting there and they might have their, I don't know what you guys use. Well, I know what you use, but let's say you're in an investigation and there's a REM pod sitting there and there's a mal meter and someone's calling out, right? Or they don't hear or see anything, but have you seen something or seen or what I'm trying to say? Because you may experience it differently.
I think what you have to remember is I'm a new member of the team, so I've been on a couple of one event and one investigation. So I don't think that I've felt or seen anything different to anybody else. I'm the same as anybody else. It's just that my belief system is different.
Okay, so that's what I was interested in, whether or not it's experienced differently,
Yeah, I don't think it is, because I think we all have the same wants from an investigation. We all want. I think be you a skeptic or be you a believer, we all want the same outcome. We want something to happen.
Yep.
It's a really difficult one to explain. Actually, but I'm 99% sure that I will experience something when I go on an investigation. And some may say, well, you're going to experience something because you want to.
Maybe, but I mean, if again, my understanding of your belief system is fairly rudimentary, but I think I understand enough. If you're living every day with the belief system that the spirits are part of everyday life, and in fact, I'm going to say for shits and giggles, that's actually the right way. That Christianity's come along later on and morphed everything for whatever. You might be right. It's not that you're wanting to; you just will, because as you say, there's spirits of nature. There's you're in an investigation and you're on a site, and this is I'm going to ask you a bit more about this a little bit later on too, the differences between the countries, but you're on a site of an old house, for example the art centre where I met you the first time there, that has been relocated to that land, okay, so that house is not there originally. So as a pagan, you may experience, say, spirits of that land are actually there, but the people who are going along to investigate, and I'm not just talking about the team, I'm talking about the public as well at events, because they're thinking in the Christian way of things is they're looking for a spirit in the house, and they're trying to experience that, where in fact you might go along and there's a spirits of the forest that was there originally that might well be there. You know what I'm saying?
That's an excellent way of looking at it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's not necessarily the building.
No, and that's where I think, again, it's this lineal thinking of, and I'm not knocking any of the teams, okay, because nobody knows, right? But it's just the way our culture's been formed with the Christian beliefs that I think there's stuff missing. People might not be bloody, you're watching these YouTube channels and they debunk things, or they think they see something, and God, that might actually be it, right? That might be the thing, but because they're looking at it from a perspective of, this is the way we were brought up in a Christian society, and this is the way we think it, they're missing stuff. You get what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's people have forgotten so much about faith since Christianity became the go-to faith.
You talk about going and looking for elves and gnomes and stuff. Fairies were part of the ancient gods' beliefs. People always, fairies were spirits. I've done a lot of Shakespearean theatre as a lighting designer over the years, and all through Shakespeare's plays there was things about the fairies. People believed that the and they were Christian, but they still had that memory of the fairies and mischievous spirits. And so. People might be missing out. They're sitting in a house and they hear something fall over and they go, oh, it's the house creaking. It might be a mischievous spirit in the corner doing something, but they discount it because they're not looking at it. I know we're laughing about it, but it's good.
I love it. I think I've never really thought about things like that. Who knows?
Yeah, I work.
Nobody knows.
I work a night shift and I spend a lot of time on my own thinking about things.
That's great. It's brilliant, and it's going to make me think about things now. And I'm thinking, why did that branch fall off that tree?
Well, that's the thing, and others debunk it because they think it's that. I've actually seen some of the UK teams say, "Oh, that was just nature," and I'm going, "Hang on, nature." There you go. I'm yelling at the monitor going, hang on, don't just say it's nature. Spirits were part of nature and the old gods. What do you think? What are you thinking?
Exactly, yeah, it's great. It's a brilliant way of looking at it.
Well, so I'm saying they're capturing stuff, they don't realise they're capturing it because we're looking at it this lineal way. But, and the other thing that I find interesting with, not so much in New Zealand because we're a young culture here, but you're from the UK, and I often sit there and I've seen some of these teams in these old Tudor houses and these castles and stuff going back to medieval times, and again, they don't even think about this. They're calling out, going, "Is there anyone here who wants to speak to me?" The problem you have, and this again comes from my background in Shakespearean theatre, where I had to learn Elizabethan English so I could follow the script right. They may not, if there's a spirit there from Elizabethan times, they might not know what the hell a modern person's talking about.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Assuming that the language, assuming that there's not a universal way of understanding. You get what I'm saying? So again,
totally.
What do you think on that?
I think it's very interesting because it's the same here to a degree, because like you said about it could be the land and not the building. I mean, the land has been inhabited for however many hundred years by the original settlers, and if somebody goes and says, well, is anybody there would like to talk to me, they ain't going to have the foggiest idea what we're talking about, because they don't understand English.
That's where I was going to go, mate. In terms of, as a pagan in New Zealand, okay, you've come from the UK where I look at it that, the old religions, the gods go back thousands of years, and that our people, my Celtic ancestors, my Saxon ancestors worshipped and stuff, right? And so you're experiencing them, you're in contact with them, whatever over there. You come here and it's the spirits, like you say, are going to be, and I've said this to a couple of people, I think I've said this to Mark a couple of times, maybe people should be calling out in Maori, because a lot of these spirits are probably Maori spirits, and they're standing there going, if they can see you, they're going, what's this bloody guy saying?
I totally agree. And when you, if you do, in ritualistic paganism, you call to the quarters to open up to guard your circle. So you go to the north, and you go to the east, and you go to the south, and go to the west. Now, to do it down here is very different, because so you face north. Your altar faces north. So down here, should you be facing south? The north in Maori is not the same as it is in English. So it's very different. It's things have changed a lot since we came to New Zealand, and my beliefs, the way I worship, is not the same as it was when I was in the UK, because the whole place feels completely different.
Well, that's what I was thinking it would, in terms of someone who has that kind of spiritual thing, that it would be different. You're connected to nature, and nature's different here, and it's
very different.
This brings up an interesting thing too, that I can't remember who I suggested it to. It was one of the UK teams, I think, plays with apps a lot, and they're sitting there going, we're getting, and I said, instead of wasting your time with these apps that have word banks in, right, why not make a translator? And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you're standing in a 1,000-year-old abbey or a castle, right, from medieval times, speak into it, and it can speak out in bloody Middle English, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And why don't we make one here that does that in Maori?
Absolutely brilliant. I was watching a thing on YouTube last night, actually, and it was an American guy with his app, and every now and again it came up with some saying, and I just thought, I can't quite see how they actually work, to be honest, if they do. But yeah, to do that if it came up, mind you, if it came up in Maori, I wouldn't be able to understand it anyway. But it's just, yeah.
No, I was sort of thinking having a translator where you could speak in, a bit like Star Trek, where you speak into it, it speaks to them in Maori, and if they spoke back, it would then translate it into English. You see what I mean?
That's like gold dust, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you can make one of them, you'd make a fortune.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But even in terms of the UK with Middle English and Elizabethan English, I mean, it's just one of those things where I think the paranormal, and again, I'm just a bloody heavy metal DJ on the peripheral of the paranormal looking in, right? You guys are the ones investigating it. But to me, I think we're missing something. We might be missing the evidence that we're all craving, because it's right there in front of us, but because most of us are looking at it from a Christianity view, whether we're Christian or not, our society is based on that, and so we're missing things.
And that's why I do hope that my joining the Paranormal New Zealand team is going to work to their advantage, because it is a completely different outlook.
Well, that's right. It might give a different perspective. It might, you may, for example, you're in the forest and you might interact with a spirit of the forest, because that's what you interact with, and they're not seeing it. Mark and the others are just not seeing it and not feeling it, and so you're able to document that possibly provide proof that yes, the spirit's there. It's rather intriguing. Religious beliefs drive the way we see the paranormal. And I'd like to say to people out there, if you are investigating the paranormal, have an open mind. Don't just look at it from the traditional or the stock standard way that we're told to look at it. Have a look on the outside. If you know someone like Sean, talk to them about their beliefs and maybe take them along and see if they can. Who knows? Maybe a pagan will crack the mystery of the paranormal.
Totally agree. But I would always say, speak to a pagan. We're lovely.
With that, I'd like to thank you for chatting on the show, and you've basically confirmed what I thought, what I've been thinking all along, and so I'm sure my other guests that I have on will do the same thing.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie on Rocket FM.
Auckland band Sonic Older from 2013's Under a Dying Sun and Ghost in the Mirror. You're on Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie, and I've got Bex Stokes with me. I'm going to have a chat with Bex about her views on the paranormal and things. Now, welcome, Bex.
Hi, thank you.
Premise was that I think that people who are exploring the paranormal today, investigating it, are, I guess you could say, constrained by, I guess, the way we live in a Christian society, and they think of things, and this is not a go at Christianity, but think of things as the way Christian beliefs form things. Demons, angels, good, bad, and perhaps all the investigation is that they're doing is they're missing stuff because of that belief system. So first of all, what are your beliefs? What do you kind of believe in? And is it a religion or is it just beliefs? And what's your background?
Okay, well, it's not a religion, it's beliefs. I'm a witch, but I'm not a Wiccan. Wiccan is a religion, Wicca. I am just basically an hereditary witch. My Nana, all of them way down the line, they were all a little bit weird. In fact, my Nana was Shinto in her last days. I don't believe in gods. I believe in more of archetypal energies. So if I'm doing something, I want to call on an energy. I'm not going to call on an actual God. I was raised, adopted into a Christian family, and I stopped going to church at 12 because none of it made any sense. I've been put on medications because I heard voices or saw dead people, and obviously they were hallucinations to everybody. I get a little bit annoyed when I hear about things like a demonic or portals to hell or whatever you call them. I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in heaven. I do believe that sometimes people die, they don't leave, they stick around.
I think the way people investigate, they're not looking at it, I don't believe, in the right way. See, I watch them on YouTube and I think they're missing stuff. For example, I won't name the channel, but I watched a channel one night where they were in a house. There was a tree outside moving, making noise. Oh, that's just the wind. Well, was it? Maybe that was a spirit activity, and I kind of, what do you think? Do you think I'm right in thinking that maybe people are just missing stuff?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm not an agreeable person at all. Ask anybody. I believe in all the, let's say, elementals. Little energies that belong to every single part of nature. I believe that we go in cyclical energy. I believe that paranormal investigators miss a lot. I have a photo in particular that I took one night after a spirit session where I was talking with my grandmothers who were all deceased. One of them, going back a long way. And I snapped two photos, one immediately after the other. One was clear as a bell. You could see the entire room. The other photo was completely covered in mist. You couldn't see anything, couldn't see the table, and there were three distinct figures in that mist. People will say lens flare on a camera, on a phone. I don't think so. There was nothing. I tried to debunk it myself and could not. I believe that spirits are around us all the time. I believe that our ancestors are around us all the time. I believe that everything has an energy. Everything is made of carbon. I'm a science nerd and a witch, and those two things help me to debunk what I'm doing at the same time, if that makes sense.
You said that you had some contact with your grandmothers. Now, this is another area that I really get bugged by, okay, and it's not so much possibly people like yourself, because I've known a few witches over the years, and I've found them to be pretty much genuine. The one that bugs me are these so-called psychics who walk into rooms and go, yes, it's a man talking to me, and I think he's doing this or I think he's doing that. Does that make sense? Well, either you're talking to them and you're in direct contact with them, or you're bloody not. Right?
Yeah.
Yep. What's your view on most of these so-called psychics?
There are genuine psychics out there. I also know for a fact, because I'm a dream scryer, I know that spirit on the other side speaks in riddles. We're not supposed to understand it. I agree with you in that there's a lot of people, there have been some famous New Zealand psychics, and they lost, as far as I was concerned, they lost their mojo. The bigger they got, the more desperate they got to carry on what people saw in them. And I don't believe, I've had sessions here where I've just had one-on-one and I haven't charged for it. It's just koha. And I have had things come through that shocked even me. But it's one of those things where if you're going to make a big deal about it, if you're going to go on TV and, like you say, march into a room and say, I've got a man here. I mean, that program Most Haunted, for a start, the hostess started out as just a TV show host, and then all of a sudden, I saw an episode the other night, all of a sudden she's incredibly psychic and she can draw a Ouija board on a piece of paper and pick out a guy's name, pick out his age, probably pick out what he was wearing. And that kind of sham really upsets me for the few genuine ones that are out there. And I don't think that it's actually psychic. I think people who have a connection to ancestor are one thing. People who just say to everybody else, all and sundry, or advertise themselves as a psychic medium, I think that annoys me.
Yeah, they're the ones I'm talking about where, I'm a psychic medium, and for the most part I've found them to be, well, when I've watched them, I haven't watched that Most Haunted, I've heard a lot about, but some of the group investigators I've watched with, they'll have a psychic medium tagging along, and it's all speaking in vagaries, and I'm like, I could have said that to you, right? It's like what you know what I'm saying? It's all generalisations and vagaries, and I'm like, really? This is, and like you say, there are genuine people there supposedly, but that sort of shit, when you see it, people like myself that has a little bit of scepticism looks at it and goes, really? Come on.
I am a skeptic. I am my own worst enemy. I will try and, like with my photo that I took, I will try and debunk everything I feel. The scientist in me wants to investigate it and get to the bottom of it and find out what exactly is happening. Is it an hallucination? Is there something going on in my head that shouldn't be? I do have specific. I was a forced adoption. I didn't find my birth mother until I was 26. Was when I spoke to her for the first time. I was playing a game of Scrabble with a friend, and the woman that had been around me since I was a child, I called her the Blue Lady because she just appeared like that. She didn't speak to me in whole sentences. I had a name. I was playing Scrabble with a friend. I had a name whispered in my ear. I went upstairs, borrowed my landlord's phone, rang directories, got the woman on directories, and she said, oh, yes, I know him. I go to his church. He still lives in Christchurch. And I was speaking to him, and I found my birth mother living in the United States within the hour. And I had spent years and years and years looking for her before that, and I had a name whispered in my ear. That is not an auditory hallucination because it gave me a very specific name and I found the person. So there are things like that happen. But yeah, again, there's just too many cold readings. There's too many people doing cold readings out there, and it does bother me.
Exactly my point. And you know, you brought up Ouija boards there. That's the other thing that bugs me. I mean, I don't know where witches stand on that, but I look at these things and I go, how come you've got to put your hand on the bloody planchette? Can't you just like have the board there and let it move? If the spirit's that in control, why can't it just move around? The skeptic in me says someone's moving it because they got their fingers on it, right? I don't know where the witches stand on Ouija boards, but I find them a little bit sort of, yeah.
Do you know what's funny? I'm sitting at a table that has a Ouija board tablecloth on it. I don't use them. I generally don't trust them. I have got a small miniature one on its way to me. And it's funny because I said I wanted to keep it by the front door. And next time the Jehovah's Witnesses bang on the door and say, oh, Jesus died for your sins, I want to whip it out and say, well, let's just ask him, shall we?
I think the paranormal investigators, and I'm not having a go at any of them, okay? It's just the society we live in. I think they're looking in the wrong place or looking at it wrong. And the answers are there in front of them if they only embraced other belief systems.
Yep, I annoy a lot of them actually. I follow some pages on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram or TikTok or whatever the hell it's called either. But I comment on a lot of them. Oh, we've been to this place and we've seen this, that, and the other. What do you think? And I'm quite honest about it. I'm going to say you're only looking for you're looking for a ghost to come in front of you, fully materialize and say, hello, my name is John Smith. I died in 1872 of scurvy. And they're just dismissing everything, a door slamming shut. There's energies all around the place. Stop just looking for John Smith.
And again, that's what I'm saying. It's the way society's been framed. Ghosts are bad, demons are bad, and that's what they do. You're exactly right. That's exactly where I'm going, Bex. And the other thing, the other issue I have, even with New Zealand in a way, but more so with the UK ones where they've got hundreds of years of history, right? They'll be standing in an old Tudor manor and they'll be calling out. And I've said to a couple of them on their comments, I said, let's just say for shits and giggles that the spirit exists in the way you think it does, and he's there and he's haunting the place. You know why you're not getting any responses? And I would have thought someone from the UK would understand this. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, you're in a Tudor manor. Tudors are Elizabethan times, right? So what you're saying to this guy, he probably doesn't even understand what you're saying. You're talking gibberish to him. Call out to him in Elizabethan English.
Where are the cavemen?
Well, that's exactly it. You never, ever have anybody say that they've got a caveman spirit, do you? And it's likewise with New Zealand. Again, people will investigate the paranormal here with the assumption that they're looking for a European ghost. How do we know there's not Moriori, Maori, whatever, ghosts in the land? And if you're calling out to them, if they're from a very ancient time, they're not going to understand English. Presumably that's, So, I mean, again, I actually said to one of them, half joking, one of these ones that likes the gadgets and stuff, I said, why are you wasting your time with this gadget that has a word bank in it? What do you mean? I said, why don't you create something like the Star Trek Universal Translator? And what are you talking about? I said, well, have it so you can talk into it, and you're in a Tudor manor, and you push in Tudor, and it talks out into the ether in Elizabethan English, and then you can get it translated back, right? I said, wouldn't that work better than the silly thing you've got there?
Yes. Absolutely right. Absolutely, 100%.
If I had the brains, I'd make it myself. I don't know how to do it, but I just kind of thought it doesn't make any sense to me. You just, and then as a radio person, the ones that really bug me are the little transistor radios that they scan, and they're going, oh, look, they're talking to us by manipulating a radio. Well, one, they're probably from a time they don't even know what a radio is. Two, a radio is a radio. I had one of them. I was having an argument with one from the UK that said, I've pulled the telescopic aerial out of it. I've detuned it. I said, no, radios don't work like that. Inside is a crystal thing where it's still tuned, right? There's still a magnetic aerial inside. And anything you're picking up is still going to be on the broadcast bands.
Oh, God.
No. I said, yes, that's how it works.
Our radio waves work.
Exactly.
Oh. I mean, you need... Yeah.
Well, I used to listen to shortwave radio as a kid, right? And the amount of weird stuff that you could hear on shortwave radio, right? I mean, I used to sit there and say to my dad, oh, look, the aliens are talking to me, right? Because radio signals radio waves put out really weird can put out weird noises and stuff. And likewise, EMF meters, you're walking around and, oh, they've got EMF. Well, what does that mean? Because a lot of natural things put out EMF, right? It's
limestone is one. There's a lot of limestone in the world, and limestone definitely reacts to those. It sends out its own kind of weird frequency. And I watched a program, a Jack Osborne one, just for like you say, shits and giggles last night. And I know, and it's
he's the biggest clown around.
He walked into this building, and the gadget that he was holding, because, you walk everywhere holding a gadget just in case ghosts want to talk to you.
Oh, yeah.
And he walked in, and this thing was just ping, 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 and it was going off. And I just said, put it down, for God's... Like the ones that have stick men. Have you seen those?
Yeah, I have. I know.
And look, there's a man right behind you. No, there's not. No, there really isn't.
No, it's picking up. It's picking up. I actually saw one of the debunkers. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Mr. Gray. Actually, explain how that all worked, and it could pick like a door frame, depending on how the light was on the door frame. It could pick up the shape of a person because it was designed as a games thing, not a bloody detection thing for spirits. So you're inclined to think that the paranormal that we're looking at, or that is out there, is energy based. So we're talking, say, a lot of hauntings that people say, this building's particularly haunted and I see this. It could be residual energy, right?
Yeah, and it could be the land. It could have nothing to do with the building.
Right, exactly. So for example, I've been to the art house in Auckland, and that building was relocated. Now, that's kind of, I had a discussion with Mark about that one, and I said, so maybe anything that's in that house is actually from the land that it's on, rather than the house itself.
It could be.
We're too tied up with buildings, and this is what gets back to the premise of my discussion that our ancestors kind of had everyday life. Spirits were all around them, the elements, etc. That's what we're missing, I think, is that people are going into a building and saying we're specifically in this building looking for spirits, and they may find something, they might interact with something, right? There's a noise, there's a door slamming, but it's not actually to do with the house, it's the elements of that land.
Yep, agree. I mean, we had an old farmhouse. The house we used to live in was made up of two houses. The original homestead, half of it burnt down. So they attached another part of a different homestead, and there were two residuals in it. And neither one of them was aware of the other. But it was funny because the land itself, I mean, I'm part Māori, so I'm always looking out to what was this land beforehand. And it was, it's just swamp. There was nobody living there. If you go back far enough, and that's what I like about New Zealand, there's massive swathes where there hasn't been anybody living because it simply wasn't suitable for human life. There was no food, it was just muddy, it was just yuck. And these residuals, and my husband saw them, and he's about as psychic as my table. And that's why I don't like using those words. I'm going to say sensitive. He's about as sensitive as my table, and he saw them. And they did belong to the houses because it's something they had always done. The old guy had always walked through what was now the bathroom, used to be a porch. He'd always walked through that porch, put some wood on the old wood burner, which we couldn't use. It was well out of commission, but it looked nice. And then turn around and walked out again. And you only ever saw him come through the bathroom wall towards the stove and then just disappear. And that was definitely with the house, not the land. But I've been to places where you just walk in and you get a bad feeling and you think, okay, well, what's this house built on? Because it's definitely not the house. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, see and getting back to what you said earlier, they weren't aware of each other. And that would make sense to me. If you're just a residual haunting in something, there's no, I guess, sentience or intelligence there, so of course you wouldn't be aware of the other thing. That's what I think a lot of the hauntings are, is that particularly in some of these old castles where they say, we've seen a guy walking around there, it's probably just residual energy of a particular person that's walked around for a long time, and it's, again, I just think we're looking at it wrong. It's just so.
I've actually had proof of residual energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had proof of it. My ex lived in the same house for well over 20 years. Bedroom was always the same. Everything was the same. Long before I met him, he stood up, put his pants on in the same corner and left. And one morning, it was about 2-3 o'clock in the morning, something woke me up and I looked over and he was standing in the corner putting his pants on. And I rolled over to say, where the hell are you going? And I rolled over and he was still in bed. So, I mean, that to me is an echo of something that is repeated over and over.
See, that's
again.
fascinating. That's fascinating what you just said, because I have had that particular. I spent a lot of years in the theatre industry, and the tradition of theatre ghosts, right? I've had that very thing happen where I believe that some of the energy that people have seen has been a residual of somebody still living, still in the theatre. An echo, bingo, exactly. And that again is hauntings, and my view on theatres is that I think 99.9 99% of all the so-called theatre hauntings are simply residual energy, and I say that because of the amount of energy and people that have been in theatres doing the same thing night after. You're doing a play night after night. Maybe that is just energy, but it's certainly what you just said. Yeah, is interesting. The living person leaving the echo. I've often wondered about that.
Well, to me, that was proof. I think it's not as it seems.
I've been in situations where I've often thought of that, and I thought, kind of like deja vu. You know what I'm saying? You think you've seen something before, and I've often wondered, is that just an echo of an imprint that person's left behind?
There's a lot of energy and a lot of emotion in theatres. It would make sense. People say that a shock death, a surprise death, can leave a residual, or can leave a ghost, can leave an angry haunting, or so-and-so was shot here and his ghost has been seen. Now, I've been inside the trades hall where Ernie died.
Yeah.
I've been there. I used to work 2 doors down from it.
Right.
On the corner of Marion Street. And there was an old second-hand shop. Guy sold army surplus, and those were my army surplus days. And the door's been open, and I've wandered in, just stood there near the entrance because it was creepy because I knew about its history. There's the opposite. There's a hole, there's a void, there's nothing. There could not be less energy there in that place, if that makes sense. And a guy died horrifically.
Yeah, see, that's interesting. You see, that's that's interesting you say that. Very fascinating that you say that, because I spent a lot of years in the trade union movement when I was working on the waterfront, and I knew people that went in that hall, and they were the same. It was people that had claimed to have seen ghosts on the waterfront and ghosts and this, nothing. And you would have thought, if that was the case with Ernie's murder, that something would have been there, but there was nothing, apparently.
There was nothing. No, it was the opposite of very spiritual or very energetic. I've watched a guy die. I watched a guy fall off a crane when I was working in Wakefield Street. I actually watched him because I sold him a newspaper, a pie and cigarettes every single morning before he went up the crane. And I saw him miss his footing, and I saw him fall, and the whole thing happened in slow motion in my eyes. Just the whole thing happened so fast, it was slow. I was just finding my feet in terms of looking for something to believe in. And I watched him, and people say, oh, I felt such and such spirit leave his body, or I saw such and such spirit leave his body. I was with Dad when he died. I was with, and there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. There was shock. There was horror. And then it was just kind of a waste. It was like when I used to go hunting, and then there's something that's living and breathing and eating, and then there's something that's not. And I spent years after that wondering if everything that I believed was just completely and utterly wrong. And it took years for me to learn that it doesn't actually happen like that. It doesn't. You don't see the spirit just go poof and leave the body. You don't see any of that, because when you do die, I believe there's probably a lot of confusion.
Well, see, this is the thing. You brought up something interesting there, and that's something that I've always wondered about too. So, again, it's always like in a building or in a house generally or something. Now, surely, again, go back to our ancestors, the spirits were all around them out in the open. So if this guy's died in the street, there would have been other people died in that street over the years. Yeah. Why aren't we just walking down the road and seeing a spirit walk down the road? Animals, why aren't we seeing the spirit of an animal that's just been shot? It's kind of, it does question whether there is actually anything at all, but what I'm saying,
My mother walks around people and aren't there all the time. People are always thinking she's drunk, because she'll walk around someone. She knew that my uncle had died. He was in London. She was in a bookshop in Christchurch, and he dropped of a massive heart attack. She opened a box of books at the same time, halfway across the world, and saw his face smiling up at her from inside that box and knew straight away. See, that's the kind of thing where I'm talking about. She doesn't want anything to do with it. She doesn't want to know. And those are the people I tend to believe. The ones who say, no, don't want to talk about it, don't want to know.
Yeah, exactly. The ones that are all, you see some of these ghost teams where they're always getting activity, and I'm sitting there thinking, so why is it that you always get activity? This other bloke stands in a house for hours talking to the walls and he gets nothing. What makes you so special, right? And what you were just saying is about getting a message. Now, this is an interesting one. My mother, who passed last year, she kind of, I think, although she'd never really practiced, she was kind of, I guess, into some of the things that you'll believe so, she was crystals and spirits and all this, but she was fascinated with that. Anyway, the Christchurch earthquakes, because I'm from Christchurch originally, about a week before, 2 weeks maybe before the earthquakes, there was a small tremor, or she thought there was. Anyway, the story was she had a very old book in her bookcase that contained some letters that her grandmother had written to her when she was a child, and her grandmother lived in Kaikoura, and there was some quite
so
bad.
Did mine.
Oh, really? That had some. Yeah, she was saying how terrible these earthquakes were and stuff, and talking to my mother as a child, had written to her. Anyway, this book fell off her bookcase, and Mum didn't know if it was a small tremor in the night or whatever, and it opened. And when it opened on the page, here were these letters, and Mum read through them. A week later, the first massive earthquake came September the 10th.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa. And she always said to me, that was my grandmother telling us that these things were coming. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, but no, that's what I'm saying. That's the kind of thing I tend to believe more than somebody who is forever going into buildings and going, oh, it's a demon, bro. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Because it's more, I don't know, it's a little bit like the ancient astronaut theory as opposed to the Bible. It's more believable to me, you know what I mean? They're not out there. Yeah. She wasn't out there looking for it. She wasn't expecting it. It just happened.
Mark sent me a piece of the chimney from Boleskine House. Now, you know the Crowley and you know that. Now, I studied Crowley when I was in my teens, my late teens. But I never studied Boleskine House. All I knew about it was the photographs of Aleister Crowley and his sycophants around it, or outside it. And he sent me a piece of this chimney. It still had ash on it. And I've got it undercover because I unwrapped it, I held it in my hand, and I was just blown away thinking that's as close to Aleister Crowley as I'm ever going to get. And that night I had a dream, an horrific dream, about a shotgun suicide. And I know, but I dreamed, and I actually did research the next day, and I found the suicide. I found the man in my dream. And since then, it's been undercover, and I haven't touched it. But that to me was interesting because that was something that I don't really talk about. I told my husband and a good friend, but to me that was a surprise.
No, that is interesting. Like, and again, it's something we've lost, as a race. I mean, people like yourself still practice it and have the thing, but the rest of us, because I'm lazy, I can't be bothered applying myself. We've lost all that ability. And with that, I'd like to thank Bex and Sean for coming on the show, and pretty much confirms my theory. So yes, if you're out there and you're investigating the paranormal, don't just think linear. Think perhaps that noise that you hear in the trees, or the animal that you hear, or the strange noise that you put down to nature, it could well be a spirit trying to make contact. With that, I'd like to thank Bex and Sean. I've got another show coming up with them very, very shortly where we're going to talk some religion stuff, so that should be interesting. In the meantime, this is the Roadie saying, it's always swamp gas. See you next time on Paranormal After Dark. Here is Sins of Eve to take the show out, as usual.
Paranormal After Dark with the Roadie on Rocket FM.
ask myself this, are you prepared? Something's falling for you.